The unfinished story of Jennifer Judd, a murder that still haunts Baxter Springs. On a quiet street in Baxter Springs, Kansas, the promise of a newlywed life was violently extinguished just 9 days after it began. Jennifer Diane Bryan Judd, 20 years old, was found brutally murdered inside her duplex on May 11, 1992, a crime that would echo through the decades and continue to haunt her family, friends, and a town still searching for justice. Jennifer's story isn't just a mystery waiting to be solved. It's a painful reminder of how quickly joy can turn to horror, and how elusive justice can be when crucial questions are left unanswered for more than 30 years. A young woman on the brink of a new life. Jennifer was born on December 27, 1971, and raised in the small mining town of Pitcher, Oklahoma. She was a bright light to those who knew her, petite, with sandy brown curls, bright brown eyes, and a smile that came easily. In high school, she excelled as an athlete, earning recognition in both basketball and softball. But it wasn't trophies or accolades that drove her. According to close friends, Jennifer had always harbored one simple dream: to fall in love, get married, and build a family. That dream seemed to be coming true when she married her high school sweetheart, Justin Judd, on May 2, 1992. The two had recently moved into a small duplex at 219 North Park Avenue in Baxter Springs, just across the Oklahoma border. Their home was modest, their future uncertain, but the beginning was filled with hope. Wedding gifts were still wrapped or newly opened, including a brand new kitchen knife set, an innocent symbol of domestic life that would later become a macabre centerpiece of one of Kansas's most chilling unsolved murders. May 11, 1992, the day everything changed. Monday, May 11, 1992, began like any ordinary day for the newlyweds. Justin Judd left for his early morning shift at a chemical plant roughly 9 miles away, departing before sunrise. Around 9 a.m., realizing he had forgotten his lunch, Justin called Jennifer. She told him she'd bring it to him during his break. But when his lunch hour came and went and Jennifer didn't arrive, a subtle tension crept into the day. Justin called the apartment repeatedly, with no answer. Still, he tried to focus on work, telling himself she might have gotten distracted or had car trouble. When his shift ended at 2:30 p.m., Justin's unease had grown into full-blown concern. He drove home immediately, followed by a coworker and longtime friend, Chuck Chance. As Justin pulled into the driveway, he noticed Jennifer's car was still there. Inside, he saw his forgotten lunch on the passenger seat, untouched. The banana, left in the sun, was already browning, an eerie clue that time had slipped away, unnoticed by the outside world. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the apartment was dark despite the bright May sun pouring in outside. In the bedroom, the bed was neatly made, but a spilled soda and the indentation of someone having recently sat on the bed suggested a scene disrupted. Justin moved toward the kitchen. There, on the floor, lay Jennifer. She had been stabbed multiple times. Some accounts say more than a dozen wounds. Others, including one from a family member posting anonymously online, specify 9, a chilling numerical echo of her 9-day marriage. A knife blade from the couple's wedding gift set was still lodged in her back. The handle was missing. It was a brutal, deeply personal killing, and the weapon, a symbol of her new life, was used to end it. Justin froze in shock. Chuck, reportedly overwhelmed with horror, attempted to call 911 but was too distraught to speak. Justin took the phone and made the call himself. The crime scene, a puzzle of intimate violence. The immediate details of the crime scene offered a chilling juxtaposition of familiarity and violence. There were no signs of forced entry, no broken locks or shattered glass. Jennifer's keys were found on the floor, and her purse, gifts, and belongings had not been touched. Nothing had been stolen, and there was no evidence of sexual assault. The implication was chilling. Jennifer had likely known her killer. Even the murder weapon was haunting in its familiarity. The knife had come from a newly unwrapped set, one of the wedding gifts the Judds had received just days before. The symbolism was gut-wrenching. The very tools intended to prepare meals for a shared life had been turned into instruments of murder. Investigators noted that the killer had used what was readily available, suggesting either impulsivity or deliberate intent to desecrate symbols of Jennifer's happiness. Signs of a struggle indicated that Jennifer fought back. There was speculation that the confrontation may have begun in the bedroom or living room before ending fatally in the kitchen. A spilled soda, a bed that looked recently occupied, and disarray in parts of the apartment supported this theory. Adding to the mystery, Jennifer's car had not been moved. The driver's side door was reportedly open, and the keys were inside the home. Whoever killed her had the means and opportunity to flee in her vehicle but chose not to. This omission further supported the idea that robbery was not the motive, and that the killer had something more personal in mind. A fearful week before, in the days leading up to the murder, Jennifer had confided in family that something was wrong. A week before her death, someone had allegedly attempted to break into the duplex. The incident had left Jennifer shaken. She began experiencing nightmares and grew fearful enough that her father started escorting her to and from work. Whether the intruder from that earlier incident and the person who ultimately killed her were the same remains unknown, but the fear Jennifer experienced, the dreams, and the attempted break-in now seem like ominous foreshadowing. Investigators reportedly failed to connect this earlier incident with specific suspects early in the investigation. A possible missed opportunity. The investigation begins. Baxter Springs Police, the Cherokee County Sheriff's Office, and the Kansas Bureau of Investigation, KBI, all participated in the initial inquiry. From the start, investigators believed the killer was someone Jennifer and Justin knew, possibly a close friend. Justin's friend, Chuck Chance, who was present at the discovery of Jennifer's body and made the initial 911 call, quickly became a person of interest. He had been a groomsman at the Judd's wedding just 9 days earlier and was part of their inner circle. Over time, Chuck Chance would become the primary suspect in the eyes of law enforcement, a status he would retain for more than a decade. However, no charges were ever filed against him. According to a statement relayed in the Who Killed Jennifer Judd podcast, KBI agent Larry Thomas once remarked that they had enough witness information to probably charge Chance, but not enough to convict. This confession of investigatory paralysis reflected a troubling reality. They suspected someone deeply involved in the couple's life, but lacked the physical evidence or eyewitness clarity to close the case. Evidence missteps and mishandling. The investigation, while active, was plagued by alleged procedural issues that may have compromised critical evidence. Family members claimed the crime scene was not properly secured, with too many people entering the residence in the hours after the murder. There were even accusations of investigators behaving inappropriately, smirking and joking, during the most crucial early moments of the case. These missteps may have affected the integrity of physical evidence. Hair samples collected at the scene, which reportedly did not match Justin or Chuck, could have been contaminated. Other key items may have been compromised or overlooked entirely due to poor scene control. One fingerprint found on the blade of the murder weapon remains a particularly baffling piece of the puzzle. According to the podcast's forensic team, the print does not match Jennifer, Justin, or Chuck. It is unknown whether this print was ever compared to later suspects, including Jeremy Jones, a man whose name would soon surface in shocking fashion. More than 30 years have passed since the brutal killing of Jennifer Judd inside her home on North Park Avenue. Yet the wounds from that day have never healed. Not for her family, not for her friends, and not for the small Kansas community that still whispers her name in frustration and fear. As the case moved beyond its initial hours and days, what should have been a focused pursuit of justice gradually became a tangled web of half-formed suspicions, dead ends, and theories that could never quite be proven. And even as new suspects emerged and forensic science advanced, one question remained unchanged. Who killed Jennifer Judd? Chuck Chance, prime suspect in a case without conviction. Almost immediately, suspicions centered on a familiar face, Charles "Chuck" Craig Chance. He wasn't a stranger skulking in the shadows. He was a friend, a groomsman at the Judd's wedding, and the man who accompanied Justin Judd home on the day Jennifer was murdered. It was Chuck who dialed 911, shaking, shocked, and overwhelmed. Yet within hours, law enforcement marked him as their prime suspect. He remained under a cloud of suspicion for over a decade. But what made Chuck Chance the focus? According to Kansas Bureau of Investigation agent Larry Thomas, the state's case was built on witness testimony. In one documented exchange, he told another suspect, "There's no doubt I could probably charge Chuck Chance based on the witness information, but I don't think I can convict him. It was a telling admission. Strong circumstantial suspicion, yet not enough physical evidence to take him to trial. Over time, other factors added weight to that suspicion. Although Chuck had no serious criminal record at the time of the murder, his later years included multiple incarcerations related to drugs and theft, as well as protective orders stemming from alleged domestic violence. None of that proved he killed Jennifer, but it shaped how investigators saw him. Sarah Kalien, the investigator behind the Who Killed Jennifer Judd podcast, explored several potential motives. Unrequited affection, jealousy, possessiveness over his friend Justin, or a desire to keep Jennifer from revealing something she knew, possibly about drug activity. A chilling theory from Jennifer's childhood friend Michelle McCorkle suggested that Chuck might not have killed Jennifer himself, but may have arrived at the duplex before Justin, found her body, and then gone to retrieve Justin, possibly to cover for someone else. If true, that would make him not the killer, but a witness hiding the truth. Diffry, yet no charges were ever brought. And as time wore on, another name began to emerge. This one even darker. Jeremy Bryan Jones, the killer who confessed. Nearly a decade after the murder, a surprising twist reignited hope for a break in the case. Jeremy Bryan Jones, a convicted murderer already on death row in Alabama for a 2004 killing, confessed to Jennifer's murder. Not just hers, in fact, he claimed responsibility for as many as 20 murders across multiple states. Jones wasn't a stranger to the Judds. In early 1992, he had lived briefly with Justin Judd and was familiar with both Justin and Jennifer. Justin had even named him as a possible suspect during the original investigation, alleging Jones had shown an inappropriate interest in his wife. At the time, Jones denied any involvement and was released for lack of evidence, but now he was confessing. This revelation should have cracked the case wide open, but it didn't. The Kansas Bureau of Investigation ultimately dismissed Jones's confession. According to a family source who posted about the case online, the confession was considered unreliable because Jones, quote, did not know enough about the scene to convince investigators he had been at her residence. He later recanted his confession, along with all the others. Still, not everyone was convinced of his innocence. McCorkle described Jones not just as an acquaintance of Justin's, but as someone Jennifer herself considered a close friend. If true, that dynamic could drastically change how the crime is understood. A close friend with personal access might explain the lack of forced entry. It might explain the deeply personal nature of the attack. Perhaps most hauntingly, a fingerprint was found on the blade of the murder weapon, one that reportedly does not match Jennifer, Justin, or Chuck. There is no clear documentation confirming whether this print was ever compared to Jeremy Jones. If it wasn't, that oversight could represent one of the case's most devastating missteps. A new name enters the frame, Alan Redin. While Chance and Jones continued to dominate the case's narrative, a third figure quietly entered the investigative spotlight years later, thanks to the persistence of the Who Killed Jennifer Judd. Alan Redin was not connected to the Judds by friendship or family, but his criminal background raised immediate red flags. He had been in and out of prison for decades, including a conviction for rape just 3 years after Jennifer's murder. At one point, he was also a registered sex offender. And his timing was suspicious. Just 11 days after Jennifer was murdered, Redin was arrested for armed robbery. At the time, when questioned by police in relation to Jennifer's case, he claimed to have been at work on May 11, 1992. That alibi went unchecked for years, until around 2000, when investigators reportedly pulled his work records and discovered that Redin had not shown up that day. It was his first recorded absence from that job, Despite this troubling discrepancy, Redin was never charged. His connection to the crime remains circumstantial, but the timing of his offense, his false alibi, and his violent criminal history have placed him squarely in the crosshairs of the renewed investigation, modern forensics, and cold clues. As decades passed, so too did advancements in forensic science. Where once blood typing and fingerprints were the ceiling, DNA and touch analysis became the new tools of truth. In the podcast's 8th episode, titled Traces of Truth, host Sarah Kalien teased new forensic testing and a pivotal phone call that revealed important new information. Working with forensic expert Rana Delarocco, the team submitted multiple pieces of evidence for DNA testing, among them carpet that may have absorbed the attacker's blood and Jennifer's red Keds, which may contain touch DNA. Results from a blood-stained towel found in the hamper were inconclusive. The sample was too faint to yield usable results. But other evidence held more promise. The most mysterious forensic element remains the unmatched fingerprint on the blade of the murder weapon. According to the podcast team, this fingerprint does not belong to Jennifer, Justin, or Chuck. That alone should have sparked new testing years ago. The fact that it might never have been run against Jeremy Jones or other potential suspects is a sobering reflection of how close the case may have come to resolution, only to falter through inaction. Questions that won't go away. Even after all this time, crucial questions hang in the air. Who left the fingerprint on the knife? Was that print ever compared to Jeremy Jones or Alan Redin? What exactly did the recent DNA testing reveal? Why did the KBI dismiss Jones's confession without exhausting all forensic comparisons? Was Jennifer being stalked, and was the prior break-in attempt a warning of what was to come? Was the crime scene compromised so badly that the truth was lost in those early hours? There are rumors that blood was found on the front porch, an element not included in early police reports, but raised in later podcast episodes and listener discussions. There's also a disturbing suggestion that Jennifer may have had an earlier encounter, possibly romantic or inappropriate, with someone much older when she was still a minor, a revelation that could bring new context to relationships long hidden. But these threads remain frayed. Some witnesses have passed away. Others, silenced by time or fear, have stayed quiet. The burden of memory, flawed, subjective, fading, hangs over the case like fog. Hope through the static. The Who Killed Jennifer Judd podcast has done more than tell a story. It has stirred public memory. It has put pressure on agencies to revisit their files. It has reignited interest in a case that could so easily have faded into obscurity. Working with law enforcement, though sometimes indirectly, Kellyanne and her team have pushed the case back into the light. New forensic testing, fresh interviews, and an emotional appeal to those who may still know something have breathed life into a case long considered dormant. The podcast doesn't offer easy answers. It doesn't accuse recklessly, but it does what any good investigation should do. It keeps asking questions. Conclusion: a life worth remembering. Jennifer Judd was not just a victim, she was a daughter, a friend, a wife, and a young woman who deserved a full life. She dreamed of love, marriage, and children. Her story should have been one of laughter, shared dinners, and growing old with the man she loved. Instead, it is a story interrupted, violently, senselessly, and still without resolution. A $5,000 governor's reward remains in place for anyone who can provide information that leads to an arrest and conviction. But rewards alone do not bring answers. It will take memory. It will take courage. It will take someone finally speaking the truth they've held for far too long. Because someone knows what happened in that kitchen on May 11, 1992, and Jennifer Judd still deserves justice.